of the writing industry. So my friends, like I've been looking forward to this because she is so knowledgeable. So let me pull this up, make sure I have my screen share correct. All right. So we're going to be hopping into what does the future of the writing industry look like? We are at the end of 2024. What does the writing industry of 2025 look like? Join myself as I sit down with AuthorTube Writing Conference founder, SD Houston, and we chat it up. Please help me welcome back to the stage, Shannon SD Houston. Welcome, my friend.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming back and joining me. I could tell just in the chat you were having so much fun, like talking with everybody, especially during our writing game.
Yeah,
and thank you also for putting up the gift card. Thank you for that. I feel like that was some good incentive. I hope it was entertaining from a viewer experience.
Yes, it was. I enjoyed it.
So without further ado, Shannon, so for anybody here who doesn't know you, do you want to just give an introduction about yourself, who you are, where, and what is the AuthorTube Writing Conference for anybody who doesn't know?
Do you want me to do the spiel that I did earlier? That's what I usually do, but I didn't know if that was too much.
You can go for it. Go through the spiel since we probably have new members in the stream now.
Okay. So I'm Shannon. I write under the pen name of SD Houston. I do have a YouTube channel under the name of SD Houston, and I have a passion for writing about broken characters who face adversity to become better versions of themselves. There may or may not be a dragon, but there's always love to find. I'm also 1/3 of the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks podcast with Ben Pick from Learning to Write, the YouTube channel. And Jamie is a brand new host coming on. We'll see him in our next season starting in January. And then we're here to talk about the AuthorTube Writing Conference, which I am the founder and conference chair of the AuthorTube Writing Conference. It is all volunteer organization. We've had some great other members on the team with us, and you saw one in the game session if you were here for that. That was Devin Gambrell Clark. She is one of the 3 chairs of the AuthorTube Writing Conference. So it's really great. The AuthorTube Writing Conference is all about, it's a 3-day event. It is essentially a major collaboration of small to big channels on YouTube in the AuthorTube community, which I feel that most of you guys know what the AuthorTube community is, which is just a subset of the community who are writers and publishers. And so the channels are all about writers and publishers come together over a 3-day weekend to talk about all things writing and publishing. And it's been really, really great. So we don't have our keynote speaker yet, but we have Dale L. Roberts is one of our biggest sponsors of the conference. He's actually just joined our team permanently as our sponsorship coordinator, but he was my very first. Yeah, he was the first person I pitched the conference to when it was just an idea in my head. And he was our keynote speaker for the first year, and then he was a special guest speaker last year, coming back as special guest speaker this next year. He brings a lot of subscribers with him, so we're grateful for that.
So Dale Roberts, I think he's at what 100K. He
just crossed 100,000 on his big channel, but he also has a smaller channel that I don't remember. I think it's between 15 and 20,000.
Every single time a big YouTuber hits like a milestone, I feel like they start smaller channels because they figured out a strategy or they figured out a system that works. So that's very cool.
I don't know when he started the smaller channel, but when I met him, I think he had 60,000 on his big channel, and he already had the podcast channel going. And this is when I first learned about the AuthorTube conference, AuthorTube Writing community, word, where we could go and talk to people like in the chat. And I didn't realize that that was a thing on YouTube. I just thought you watched videos and made comments and you put people's chat. Because on his small channel, he does every Monday night, he has a live stream where he talks about the new stuff and what's happening in the industry. And he has a lot of connections with like Amazon. He has a direct connection with someone on Amazon, Lulu. I mean, all these different places where indie authors can publish. He's got connections. And so he's able to get a lot of this information, or you could even send him. I've found information like, hey, have you seen this? Oh, I haven't seen that. He'll put that into his news. Which DL Tillery was on. She was on earlier today.
Yep. DL was earlier on with us on our social media conversation.
I was happy to make that connection. Dale had actually asked me to make that connection between him and her because he liked what she was doing on her channel. And so she's a moderator with me on Dale's channel Monday nights. So, yeah.
That is so cool. Monday Night News with Dale is a must.
Yes, she is awesome too. DL is awesome too. So go check out her channel. I do not write horror, and I still get a lot of benefit out of her channel and her videos. So, yeah.
And I mean, like Shannon, even though I'm a fantasy, I tend to be a fantasy author. I seeing all the different writers just this past year alone, I feel like I'm
Yeah.
growing, even though they're all in different genres. Even if even if they're a memoir or poetry or children's, like I feel like I learned from everybody.
Yeah,
And I
definitely.
think that that's one of the reasons that first drew me to your community, especially the AuthorTube Writing Conference when I first found it over the summer. And I'm like, this is so cool. It's just a community of writers, authors, publishers coming together, sharing knowledge, and really like celebrating everybody. I
I
first
love
off want to start with commending you for starting this and what you've created. It is incredible.
Thank
My
you.
like my hat, tipping my hat to you. I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
And I can tell with all of the writers, a lot of the writers I've talked with, that they get a lot of value out of it. Anytime I ask anybody who knows about the AuthorTube Writing Conference, like it's like the event of the year.
Yeah,
So I'm
it keeps
kind of
me going,
curious.
to be
What
honestly.
what was that?
I said it keeps me going, to be honest, because
Mhm.
every year I'm like, this is it, I'm done. And then everyone's like, this is so great. I can't wait till you do it again. And 1 year, someone said, let's do it twice a year. I'm like,
You're like, oh my goodness, nightmare. You start like drowning in nightmares over here.
yeah.
So I'm curious, how many years has the AWC been running now?
So it's gone for 3. We're gearing up for
Okay.
our 4th right now. So we've
Okay.
got, I know for sure 3 of our 4 special guest speakers. I'm pretty sure we got our 4th one too, because I met him in person at a
Ooh,
conference
nice.
earlier
Okay.
this year.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I invited him to be a guest speaker, special guest speaker. He said yes, and he gave me his personal email address, and I emailed him, but I forgot to give him like a due date to let me know something. And I'm like, I should like email him back and be like, hey, are you still wanting to do this? So
Wow. That
yeah,
so okay, so it's been a couple years now, and clearly you're doing something right because it keeps growing exponentially
yeah.
each year. I'm curious, how did you start the AuthorTube Writing Conference? Like, what was your idea behind it, and like, did you see it becoming what it is now?
So the idea behind it was that I knew since I was like 9 I wanted to be a writer, but I thought you had to do other things, right, to make money. So I did
Mhm,
everything else, and when I finally decided, okay, that's it. You know, my husband was military, so I was like, when you're done with the military, I want to pursue writing full time. And this wasn't like a brand new thing I brought up to him. I brought it up years ago,
mhm,
and he was like, yeah. I said, okay, he followed me everywhere. I'll support you. So I started that in 2021. Well, we know what happened in
mhm.
2020. So all these conferences that I wanted to go to are now no longer happening.
Oh no. You're like, yes, I'm all ready, and then the world shuts down.
Yeah, because I have a good girlfriend that I graduated with. We both got our masters in creative writing, and every year
Mhm,
she's like, going to this conference, going to that. She's like, come with me. I can't. I'm grading papers because for 10 years I was a college English and literature instructor.
mhm,
So, and then so I was like, okay, well, I want to go to a conference, and there were some that were popping up online, but they were like really
mhm,
expensive. And I'm like, I'm just starting out, baby author here. Even if I could put the money into it, do I want to put the money into it when I'm still trying to just make money?
mhm.
So
Yeah,
my,
right.
my
That's
day,
the thing, right? You
right,
need to make money to survive, but you
right,
kind of have to put money. That's
into it.
the process.
So that was I published my debut 1 November 2021. I think it was around October when I first started thinking about the conference.
Mhm,
Um, yeah, and so I was just and things percolate in my head for a while before I do anything with them.
mhm,
And then Dale reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, we should meet." And I'm like, "Okay." And so and he talked about how to grow on YouTube, how to grow as an
mhm,
author. And I was
mhm.
like, "I promise I didn't come to this meeting to pitch you, but here's my pitch." So he was like, "Write it up." He was like, "Let
Mhm.
me know." So and then that was end of December of 2021. And so in January,
Okay.
it's like, "I need a partner for this. I can't do it by myself." It was a different partner, Jenna. Can't remember her last name now. It's been a
Mhm,
minute since we've talked. But Jenna was my first partner. I reached out to her. I wrote up like what you'll see if you go to the website. You'll see there's an
mhm.
AWC guide. We
Okay.
revamp it every year, but it was pretty much
Yes,
just
yes,
pretty much
I've
it.
read through that. It is so comprehensive.
That's what I
It
wrote in the
Yeah.
first month, and
Oh
sent
my
that over to
god.
Dale, and then he signed on.
You wrote
So
like a Bible of information. Like, good for you. That like how much work that must have gone into, and then having you to take a break from your fiction writing.
yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah. And then that year we did it because that was January. At the end of January, Dale signed on, got Jenna
Okay.
in January and July. The first year we did it in July. Every year since then we've done it in June. So,
Mhm,
but yeah, in 7 months we just scrambled together. And Jenna and I, we just went to like all these YouTube channels. We're like, hey, we're gonna do this. Do you want to join? You know, we can't
mhm,
pay you, but you get to present on your YouTube channel. So
mhm.
hopefully you can get some new audiences coming to you.
Okay.
So it's free for presenters. Presenters are not
Mhm.
paid, but people who come also don't have to pay. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, awesome. And I know I checked it out this past year, and I've seen a couple of videos from the previous years. I can just tell there's so many writers involved. There are so many different personalities involved, which is awesome. So now that you've had it a few years, and it's kind of growing, where do you see like the future of this going? What are your like, all right, AWC, like where would you want it to be in like a perfect world a couple years from now?
I mean, I wouldn't want the mission to change. I'd want it to stay what it is, which is just us all coming together to share everything we know about writing and publishing with everybody. So it's all in one place where you can find it.
And always keeping it like a free option.
Yes.
It's a free resource, because we know conventions out there are expensive, which I love. I love that you have this as the free resource for writers.
And I will tell you, before we even started approaching the community, Dale said, "Hey, I've got this platform. It was given to me for free for life. You can have it if you want for your conference." And Jen and I took a look at it, and it was a platform where people would have to pay to come to the conference. I'm like, this is not my vision. So I turned it down because that's not what I had in my mind.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think when we have a vision for something, I think, well, there's times where we have to have some flexibility. I think the core vision, like we have to stay true to that.
Yeah.
And I think clearly you're doing it right, since it's continuing to be successful. I know when you guys put out the announcement a couple months ago, like there were so many people who I saw like talking about it, signing up, and just interested in speaking and hyping it up. So it's very, very cool. Yeah. Are you ever surprised by like the reaction you've seen from the writing community?
I think because there's a lot that we do behind the scenes. I've got like a piece of hair or something that's like tickling me, and it keeps tickling my, like right here by my cheek. But yeah, I don't ever, like, behind the scenes, we're doing so much. We're talking to people, lots of emails. Last year I had decided, okay, that's it. I'm done, because it was just so much that I had to do. And it was just me and our partner at that time. And I had reached out to one guy that I talked to quite a bit in the community, and I was like, hey, I think this is it. I'm not doing this anymore. I crashed the website. I was up to 3 o'clock in the morning on Friday, the day that we started. I couldn't get it up and then I had to go to the gym at 5 and then come back, and I was up to midnight. And then we had just a speaker behind the scenes who was a big diva. And so I was just like, I can't, no, this is not for me. I'm done. And he said, reach out to the community, ask for help. He was like, do that, and then see if that helps. And so we decided to do that. And I said at the end of the conference, and that's where it surprises me at the end of the conference, like, oh, I love this. Especially with like that one person's like, we should do this twice a year. I'm
like, nope.
But we did. And it surprised me that we reached out to the community. I got a new partner in between the first and second year, Margaret Pinard, and she's been with me for 2 years. But I was like, let's do it. So we came up with these ideas of all these different people we could ask for people to help us. We came up with positions. We put it out there, and we're like, if it gets filled up, and we were very honest. If we don't get the help, we're not doing it again. And if we do, then we'll do it again. And we got a ton of people who volunteered, and it was just so very helpful. I was just surprised by the love shown for the conference.
It was surprised by just like the amount of people who are interested and willing to volunteer.
Yeah. Because it's for free. Yeah. No one's getting it.
And I think that's always it's almost like a roadblock or an obstacle we put in our minds. We think, okay, because I'm not going to pay money, nobody's going to be interested. But I think then sometimes, and like I can tell this from like even my own community, that we don't always take into consideration what value is. And for a lot of people, value is just being involved. People love to be involved in these types of writing experiences. I think volunteer positions are also great resume builders as well. And then it's also great networking opportunities. So I think I could tell why people would be interested in volunteering. I know Devin mentioned that you guys are still open for volunteers. If anybody does want to volunteer for the AWC, which is during the summer, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's the last weekend in June, the 27th through the 29th.
Okay. Yep. So it's the last weekend of June. It's the AWC is a virtual writing conference. It's the virtual writing conference. How can people be involved?
I mean, they could email us. We have a contact page on the website, so you can just contact us. We do have a form, but I don't know if we've linked that form anywhere on the website. We usually put it out in our videos when we do our live streams. But I mean, it doesn't matter. They don't have to like fill out the form to start with. We'll just give them the form if they email us through the help page. But it's authortube writing conference at gmail.com.
Mhm. And I definitely wanted to make sure that I put that out there because and this goes back to one of the reasons that I connected with you in the first place. My mission is helping to just influence the art of writing and to help push that. I love writing and I love the process, but why do so many people get burnt out?
Yeah.
So like I love writing itself, and that almost goes hand in hand with writing conventions that really celebrate writing, that celebrate the art, the authors, and of course the publishers, because those are all the people who are doing the work and want to do it and want to be successful. So like I wholeheartedly believe in your mission, Shannon, and I'm inspired whenever I talk to you about it.
Yay. Well, we'd love to have you part of it. I know we've talked about it, so there's things behind the scenes we're talking about. So hopefully we'll have Jared with us for the next AWC.
Woo! So that hopefully really, really cool. And for anybody who does want to be involved, I think I saw think I saw Devin and one of your guys' other members dropping some links down in the chat on your page. So, but it's pretty easy to find. It's just authortubewritingconference.com.
Oh, thank you.
Super easy to find. Totally trust you guys. If you want to go check it out, authortubewritingconference.com. So as we think about the future and as we think about the industry at large, where do you think well, actually, let me frame this. When we pull back and we look at the writing industry, how do you think the writing industry felt in 2024? Like what does your gut kind of tell you from all the authors and writers that you've spoken with?
Well, I mean, of course you have the AI in there, so that's going to be a huge part of it. So, but I think that the conversation, I didn't go to Author Nation. It was the first year it was Author Nation. It was 20 books, 50K before that. But in 20 books, 50K, their last one in Author Nation, I think the themes are kind of the same, which is the idea of direct selling. And then, creating more community so you can get closer to your readers, have that data closer to you. What's been some of the other ones? And I'm trying to think. I know subscription models have really grown in popularity over the last year. I would say, Ream was really growing there for 2 years, but they've had a shakeup at the top of their leadership. So I don't know what it's going to fall out into. It's still going strong, but it may change over time. But I'm on Ream.
And then we also saw the shakeup of NaNoWriMo a second shade up. Obviously not as horrible as the first one, but still AI polarizing, right?
Yes, very polarizing. Yep. So yeah, definitely. So I would say those are the biggest things. I think, there's a lot of talk around this idea of the play to pay model, especially when you have to, pay for advertising on Amazon to get views on Amazon. And that a lot of authors really want to get away from this model. Of course, it's hard to, just say no to Amazon because that is roughly 70% of authors' income. So, but people do want to get away from that. And that does come through different models, more the direct sales models, whether it is a website that you're selling or you're doing Kickstarters, which I like the Kickstarter model. So I'm doing that, and that also, and I love the idea of knowing, okay, what is it about my work that my readers are drawn to? You can't really get that information if someone's buying your book on Amazon because you don't even know who's buying your book. So,
right. Amazon doesn't have that specific of analytics.
Well, they do. They just don't give it to you.
Exactly. Right. Unlike I'm so blessed we're blessed with YouTube. We get all the analytics. Thank you, Google, for that. Like, yes. Yep.
And then I feel that what AI is possibly helping us do is think about other ways to sell our work. And I kind of mentioned it earlier in the chat. I think, I don't remember what chat. I don't remember what was going on the screen, but I was mentioning it to Devin, where I had just watched this video that was 23 ways to transform one book into more money. And as he was going through all of them, I was like, oh, I did that. Well, I'm doing that. And I'm doing that. And I was like, these are all things. And he is an AI positive channel. His is actually everything's AI in his channel, but you could do all of it without AI. So, a lot of that stuff, I'm thinking, we need to find a way to be seen more. And sometimes that might not just be just that one book that we write. It's like, what else can we do with it? Like, coloring books, audio dramas are really growing in popularity along with audiobooks, right? But audio dramas is coming up behind that.
And I think that's because of the predominance of just audio in general. I think it's the same reason podcasts have, like the last 5 years, podcasts have been a thing. And I think it's because of people's limiting attention span. We're doing multiple things. So then we're like, oh, I don't need to watch this on the screen anymore. I want to listen to it as well while I'm doing other things. I think that's probably why, because audio's become very, very popular.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can definitely, I have auditory issues. So audiobooks don't really work for me, but I am doing my own audiobooks.
Yeah, I'm planning on doing the same thing. Any tips on your any tips on audiobooks?
Well, I mean, I do use the it's the free program Audacity.
Okay.
And so it can listen for certain tones and stuff. So I have it do that. I don't
Okay.
remember how I set it up. I Googled it on YouTube and did the directions, and now it tells me if something's too low or too high. And then I just redo it. And I tend to drop off at the end of my sentences. So there's a lot of redoing.
Like listening to it and you're like, oh, yep, got to change that.
Yeah. But sometimes I can't hear that difference. So I rely on the program to tell me this is too low or this is too high. So
gotcha. That's definitely really helpful. I know I'm planning on doing all my own stuff next year. But I think to a couple of points you made, right? I think things that are on, or it sounds like things that have been on writers' minds, obviously AI, right? AI has been a big thing. And then I think as an author, sounds like you spoke to advertising, but I think the challenge is, how do we draw, or how do we make a living as an author? And usually the way to make a living is book sales. But if I don't make enough through book sales, which it used to be, sell paperbacks, but now we have ebooks and audiobooks, and there's different sources. And then how do I make money on top of that that's actually sustainable? And even a lot of writers do a bunch of books, and that's still not enough money. Right?
Well, that's where I like this idea of, these 23 things that you can do, which I have the link if you want to drop that. No, I can't drop it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to drop that in the private chat, I'll drop it in the comments.
And again, he is AI positive, but if you don't want to use AI, you can still do all of these things without using AI. So, but yeah, some of the things I didn't even think about, like he talked about doing a young reader edition. He writes fantasy. So he has a free prompt actually that you can get, but you could do it yourself. You can use the AI to condense it, or you condense it yourself, because a lot of fantasy is really long, might have some violence in there, might have other things if you have romance and stuff like that. And you can take all that out and make a young reader edition. Well, you're not really doing like that. You're not coming up with a whole new story. So you're using one book to come up with other things to sell from that one book. And translations, I mean, DeepL has been around for a while, which is using AI, but they didn't say it uses AI because it was not a buzzword. But DeepL is a website, deepl.com.
And what is that? Is that a translation
it's
website?
A translation website. You put your work in there, translate it to whatever language you want.
Yeah.
A few years ago, there was a gal in the AuthorTube community. She's kind of she's still on YouTube, but she's gone more toward other stuff, not AuthorTube anymore. But her first language is French, but she did all her books in English. And then when she was going to have a book signing or something, she lives in Belgium, and she knew that the people there were only going to want the French version. So she used DeepL to translate it, even though she speaks French. But she said that you would need an editor. So you would have to hire an editor. Well, she had her mom who speaks French as well. So two of them were editing. I mean, and there's a new program, there's a new company out that has one that it is, from what I understand, is so good. It's AI again. But it's so good that you don't even need to get an editor now. I'm watching it. It's brand new. It's only been around for 5 months. But there's been some people have done some studies on it, like their own studies, like their case studies, like putting their books through, seeing how it sells in different countries.
Yeah. But I could totally see how that's a success, because I mean, even from the content creation industry and just a lot of the video industry in general, a lot of these companies have really played into translation services this year, because AI has now made translation more accessible, right? Yeah. Why would you be limited to a US market when you can have the entire world of other people who will connect with your writing, right? So it's like, it makes sense. But now we have that technology, which is AI, which is now accessible to a mainstream, to more of a mainstream author, which totally makes sense. So then that makes me think that as we're looking forward to next year, that on a lot of writers' minds is, A, how do I make more money being an author? And then B, how do I make it accessible to the greater world?
Yeah. And that was, I didn't remember he said this, but I had said it to Devin earlier. He said, make different rated versions of your book. So if your book's like rated R, make a PG version, make a PG-13 version.
That's interesting. So then you would just cut certain scenes or adjust. That's It's actually really interesting.
Yeah, he had a lot of great
Mhm.
ideas, and I was
Mhm.
like, some of these I thought of, like the comic book. I want to do a comic book one day, audio
Mhm.
drama. I'm doing my audiobook already. The coloring
Mhm.
book, I did a coloring book with my first in my next series. I've got a coloring book with that, and my next book that I'm putting on Kickstarter will also have a coloring book with it. And that
Mhm.
actually wasn't too expensive. I found a gentleman on Fiverr. I like using Fiverr, so
I mean,
um,
probably, and the great
yeah,
thing with Fiverr is sometimes you find incredible people, sometimes you find not so incredible
yes,
people.
I've had some
Like
bad.
everything,
Yeah,
you just got to research. And
I've
I
I've
think
had
that's what
some
it
bad
comes down to.
experiences on there, but
Mhm.
the good ones I keep around. I'm like, I love what they do, and they're
Yep.
not real expensive. Now he's raised his prices since I used him, but they're still not out astronomical.
Mhm.
So, but there's just a lot that I think we're gonna have to go into. And you said we make our money from book sales, but if you do listen, especially on the nonfiction side, people say
Mhm.
book sales is how you get into the market, but that's not where you're making your money. You make your money from the courses, from
Mhm.
the
From all
other
the
stuff,
different things, right? From all
right?
the multiple sources of
Mhm.
income.
So if you're not nonfiction, how can you
Mhm.
make that money from these other sources? That's not just your book.
Mhm.
And I think that could be those things like, you got the dragon stickers. I already got my stickers for my next Kickstarter. I've got my
I
dragon. This is
love
my
it.
dragon.
You got the holographic
So
ones.
this one
Oh,
is
I
the
love
hollow.
it.
No, this one is it's
Foil?
a glitter.
I love that so
So, and
much.
then this one is my dragon from my first book, and that one's holographic.
I love that so much.
So, which I get the basic design of the dragons from elsewhere, but then I change it and I make it my own.
Mhm.
I'm a bit artsy. So those are for my Kickstarters.
Mhm.
I have my next one going in February. So, I do like that. And so after my Kickstarter is over, whatever I have left over, I can sell. So, I
Mhm.
mean, those are things I'm thinking about. And I think
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
what we need to
Absolutely.
do.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that do, do you feel that diversifying your income, do you feel that's been a predominant thing on writers' mind the past year or so, or do you think it's starting to become more and more relevant now?
I think it's been kind of there for a while.
Hmm.
So I think it was just different for diversifying for most authors. I think that meant like doing editing jobs
Hmm.
or being a writing coach,
Hmm.
things like that. But that all takes away from writing. So,
But
um,
I think what's changed now though is with leveraging AI, right? So I
yes.
think AI is what makes possible. Now we can do 3 to 4 different things before. Now we can do 4 to 8, or maybe more, depending on how we leverage it. I was like, yeah, absolutely. So and I think that's what made me think. So with AI, do you think it's now possible to be able to do the same book in all these different formats by myself? Do you think AI makes that possible? So let's
Yeah.
say I have a novel, turn it into a short story, turn it into a stage play, graphic novel,
Well,
something for the screen.
for this video, this Jason Hamilton, his channel is the Nerdy Novelist.
Hmm.
So
Yep, yeah. I've seen some of his
yeah.
stuff before. Yep.
So he offered all the prompts for all of these to run your book through AI to get all
Hmm.
of these 23 ideas.
Hmm.
So I think some are more viable than others, but yeah, I do. So AI is not perfect though, right? So you can
Yep,
use
it isn't.
AI.
As we talked about earlier, AI is
Yes.
definitely not perfect.
So I might use his prompt to run my book through to get a young reader version, but then I'm going to have to like go through it with a fine tooth comb to make sure
Hmm.
that it is exactly what I want the reader to know for my book and that
Hmm.
it's the right information. So I think I'd be more likely to just run it through like a few chapters and see what it
Hmm.
does, and then
Hmm.
emulate it and do it myself then on the rest of the book.
As kind of a test trial. Yeah,
Yes,
I completely
just to
agree.
see what it does to make it into a
Hmm.
young reader, version or whatever.
I absolutely love that. So a lot of those are the pros of AI. When we think about the fears, would you say there's things that a lot of writers that you've spoken with or authors that you think are generally afraid of when it comes to writing or the industry of this coming year?
Because of AI.
Or maybe just in general. I mean, I know AI is part of the equation, but I'm wondering if there's other things that authors are like, well, you know what? I don't want to be an author anymore because
I
now's
think
not the time.
I think the play to pay model scares a lot.
Mhm.
And I didn't make this up. I'm sure you know that, but just in case there's
Mhm.
anyone in the chat, this is not a term I've made up. This is a term that I don't
No,
know who
yeah, the
actually
play to
made
pay.
it.
So let's just clarify for a second. What is the play to pay model for
This
any of
is
our
where
audience who doesn't know?
Yeah, this is where you pay money to get your book
Mhm,
in front of people. So whether this
mhm,
is advertising through social media or advertising on book retailer site, paying for book companies to promote your book. I mean, everything. If you want to get noticed, you basically have to pay in order to get into the game to get noticed.
mhm,
So that's the model that's happening right now. There are lots of theories of where models will go from here, and I think that Becca Stein, she talked about the idea that we've been in what's considered horizontal publishing and marketing, which is, we're going along this timeline that's horizontal, but we need to be vertical, and that's all the stuff that I've just been talking about. And she talked about this like
mhm,
2 years ago, which is you need to have all these other products that come off of your books to get
mhm,
people interested. And part of that too is building your community somewhere, whether it's like on
mhm.
Facebook or Discord or whatever, is, building your community, and getting that more direct access to your readers.
Would you agree that when we talk about building a community, is the building community, is it around building your book series? Let's say you're coming out with a 10-part book series, or is it around building a community around you as an author?
I think that depends on the author. Some
Okay.
authors are not
Interesting.
comfortable having that's essentially a brand, is building their
Mhm,
brand
yep.
around them. They're not
Mhm,
comfortable with that. They'd rather have it built around their books.
mhm,
So, and then I think some of it, I mean, for me, and this is more personal,
mhm,
for me, it's figuring out what works. So how can I build my community? So I figured out pretty early on YouTube how to build my community. That was great. But trying to build a community of readers, because my community is writers mostly. So I mean, they're readers too, but they're writers. But
mhm,
building a community of readers, I've just been trying different things, and
mhm,
I don't think I think I got the imposter syndrome trying to build a community around me. No,
mhm.
so, so it's just trying to
If
figure out.
anybody here in the chat has imposter syndrome, or if you've ever experienced imposter syndrome, just say I. Say I in the chat. I want everyone to show, because I know a lot of us have dealt with imposter syndrome. If you've dealt with imposter syndrome before, say I. Drop a comment, because I know I have. I definitely have before. Man.
Yeah. Which I love what Becca Stein says to that too. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she says
Mhm.
only imposters don't get imposter syndrome.
Only- that's a great quote. That is
It is a
absolutely a
great
great quote.
one.
I love that.
Yes. So, but yeah, there's like, I can't imagine building a community around me. I look at like, who's it? Christopher Hopper. Like,
Mhm,
oh my gosh, that guy, like he built his community around him and he did it well. He has
mhm.
a HopperCon. He has a conference where people come to his conference. And it's all about him.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yes, but I don't think I could. I think and I've seen him talk in person.
Mhm.
Very charismatic. I'm not that charismatic at all. So not going to happen. But
But I think we also have to play to our strengths, right? So
yes.
he probably knows that he's charismatic, so
Yeah.
he knows that he can build a convention around him, right? So we have to play to what we're good at, which is what I always try to tell people, because like you were saying, not everybody wants to be the face of their brand.
Yeah.
Do you,
So
do you have any recommendations that you would suggest to people who don't want to be the face of their author brand, but they want to be a successful author?
yeah, I mean, I'm just trying things out. Now I do put my face out there because I'm on YouTube.
Mhm,
And I did a lot of videos and I showed up on screen a lot. Now mostly my YouTube is, I don't show myself on screen, but I'm doing writing sprints. So
okay.
you hear my
Okay.
voice. But I still show up on screen for like the AuthorTube writing conference and things like this. So,
Mhm,
but I'm out there already on the screen, but again, I don't feel comfortable doing it around me. So I have just tried different little things.
mhm,
And I think it came down to figuring out what your author brand is. And I feel
mhm,
author brand is more than just colors. It's
mhm,
what you write and what do you offer to people that they get from your writing, which that's hard to
mhm,
know if you don't talk to your readers. And if you're only
mhm.
selling through Amazon, you're not talking to your readers. So you don't know what it is that they're being drawn to in your
Yep.
writing. So and you guys, you could start small. My very first street team had 3 people on it. So, and they were awesome. And they went out there and they busted their butt to get that book out there everywhere. So,
And
but they know.
when you say street team, what does that mean exactly? Is
So,
like 3 of your family helping you push the book?
yeah, well, not my family, but friends are not friends. I mean, they're people I know now only
Mhm.
because they've read my book. So I
Gotcha,
didn't know
gotcha. So
them
they became
before.
fans. Okay,
They
that
became
makes
fans,
sense.
and
Mhm.
so I do an email automation newsletter. I
Okay.
have a few set up. I have like 8 different automations 13, I think, actually now. But in my automation sequence, I say, hey, if you really like this book and you want to be part of my street team, just, let me know if you've reviewed any of my books anywhere, because I need to know that you know about my world. And then you can come to my street team. And I had a dozen or so people who signed up for it. And then I put it on Discord, and that kind of got people. And like only 8 people came over. And then of those, only 3 continued. But I didn't know them. But listening to them talk, or watching, I guess, on the screen, you're not listening, seeing them talk about my book made me realize what it is. They're like, oh yeah, I do that. And that's when I came up like, oh wow, all my characters have some type of trauma, and they are going through something in my book that makes them stronger characters. And that's how I came up with my tagline. So, but I didn't realize that until it was my 4th book I was writing, and listening to and watching what my readers were saying, and yeah.
That's actually really cool. So was it that your street team helped you with doing talking about the book on like live streams, videos, advertising? I
did 1 month, 4 weeks of challenges. And then there was also a dragon scavenger hunt. And so every week there was a challenge.
There's a dragon scavenger hunt?
Yeah. What? There's like 20 things on there. So the first week, I think it was that they had to post a picture with a quote from the book. And I did it myself too. And we all put it in the chat. And then we also put links to where we posted them at. And so everybody who did it that week got an entry into a random drawing. And there was a random drawing at the end of every week. And I put the prizes before the week started. And then there was an overall prize at the very end. And for every dragon scavenger hunt thing you did, you also got another point into it. So yeah, and then one gal, she won everything but 1 week. And she felt bad about it. And she was like, send this over to that girl over there who didn't get anything. And so I sent it to her instead. And so they were like a very giving community, just the 3 of them even, just.
Oh my God. I absolutely love that. Like, speaking of dragons, have dragons been popular for a while? I feel like I've been like under a rock for so long, and I'm like, all right, I've loved dragons my entire life. I'll just say, I know I'm a dragon enthusiast. And I'm like, oh wait, it's been trending for a while now.
Yeah. So I went to 20 Bucks at 50K conference in 2022, I think. These things are running together.
A couple years ago. Couple years.
And it was right before, because I wrote fantasy before. So my first series is just fantasy. But I knew that I was going to change into fantasy romance. And I knew I was going to write about dragons because I wrote about Irish mythology in the 3rd century. And there was only 1 dragon left. And I plugged him into my story every time I could. And so I was like, I just like writing about dragons. So I'm going to go with dragons. So, but I was looking at the K-Lytics reports. I don't know if you've ever looked at those before.
The what you said, the what reports?
K-Lytics. It's by, is it Alex Newton? I think he makes them. He's a numbers guy. And
I don't think so. What are they?
So K-Lytics. So, and this is just Amazon, but he looks at Amazon and he does a deep dive on genres and subgenres. And every year he has like a basic report that comes out, and that's free. But then he has like very specific reports that come out, and like he just had his first ever Cozy Fantasy K-Lytics report come out. Cozy Fantasy is growing in popularity right now. So the first year he did, and you never know when the K-Lytics reports are come out, because he says he doesn't have a schedule he goes by. He looks at what's booming, and he goes in there and he takes data for a year, and he does everything from, where is it hot? Is it just a trending? Is it, he has like this graphic to look at, and then he breaks it down by like the books that stay in the top 100 consistently. And he looks at those and the price points, the blurbs, and then he even breaks down the blurbs, like is it first person, third person blurbs, like, things like that, like what's consistent through the blurbs, what's consistent with the book cover. So anyways, I was looking at the K-Lytics. It was the very first one he did for fantasy romance, and it was 2020. And I was looking at it, and it was split between having a character on the cover and having like the cover that has like, just like graphics, like color, pretty graphics, sort of like Fourth Wing is just like a graphics cover.
Yep.
So it doesn't have people or anything specific on there. And I was like, which one should I do? Which one should I do for my book? And I went to the 2022, I think it was 2022, 20 Bucks 50K conference. And I went to all the romantasy writers who had tables at the end of the conference. And I stopped by and I said, here's what I'm going to be writing next. Here's what K-Lytics has. What do you think I should do? And every single one of them said the same thing. If you've got dragons, you put it on the cover.
You put a dragon on the cover. Wait, so what you're saying is put a dragon on it?
Yes.
Oh my God.
So
I love it.
That's my first book cover. Got a dragon on there. My second book
I know.
cover's
I
done.
saw that and I instantly fell in love with your book series.
Yeah.
I
My
and you
second
said
book
you do your
cover. Oh, sorry, go.
no, what were you saying?
No, go ahead.
No, I was saying, and you said you do your own audiobooks.
Mhm.
So I am definitely going to be listening to them.
Yeah.
Audiobooks are so much easier. I'm like, yeah, audiobooks are always a win for me.
And then my second book cover, that'll be my next Kickstarter, which it's up on Kickstarter right now, the launch pre-launch pages.
Mhm.
I did that dragon, the neck on up, I did him. So
That is so cool. I know I
yeah.
literally just I hired out for my first book cover for Scarecrow, and they're currently in the process of creating it right now. I'm just like
So
excitement.
exciting.
I know, right? It's enthusiasm
Yes.
for it.
Yes. I love the cover designer. I just didn't like any of the dragons that she had access to. And she said it was becoming, she's just a designer, like she's not an artist. So she
Mhm.
takes like stock photos and she's able to really mesh them up really well.
Mhm.
But the stock photos, she was having a hard time not finding things that didn't look AI. And at that
Mhm.
time they weren't labeling it as AI or not. And she didn't want to use anything AI. I was like, I totally
Mhm.
agree. Want something that's, and I said, well, do you mind if I give it a chance at doing it myself? Because I drew lots of dragons, but never in a graphic design program before. I made all my first book covers.
Good for you. That's pretty awesome. That's
And I
really,
hired
really
a cover designer, but I just like mine better. So I ended
oh,
up
of course. You gotta you gotta celebrate your original successes, especially as
yes.
you grow over time.
But
It
yeah.
so with so speaking of like where we're kind of in a genre a little bit, what do you think? And I mean, I from the top of my head, from what I've seen and researched, I've seen that romance fantasy have been kind of like the kingpin, queen pin genres for a while. Do
Yes.
you do you see them continuing to remain on top as
Yes.
we're going into the next year? Do you
Yes.
see maybe something like romantasy becoming more popular? Like, how are you feeling about genre as we look towards next year?
Yeah, I think fantasy and romance, those two are the highest bigging genres right now that are growing. And so
Mhm.
I think any combination of that is going to work.
Is always going to be a win. Of course, like romantasy, which makes sense.
Yes. And
Mhm.
then you got science fiction and historical fiction, which are also coming up in the ranks right now.
Really, historical fiction is as well.
Yeah. It's
Interesting.
interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. Because for a while, I know horror has also been growing, but it's not at the top. But for anyone
It
who's a
doesn't get
horror
that
writer
same
out
like
there, yeah.
it just doesn't have that same. But you know what's interesting in this year of doing all these live streams? When I look at the analytics and we read so many stories on the stream. We do fantasy, sci-fi, poetry, children's, memoir, all the stories. The one genre type that always keeps people watching, and this is like exponentially the same every time, horror and thrillers. They always keep people watching longer. And I
Yeah.
think it's the mystery. But fantasy and romance is what continues to remain at the top.
Yeah, at least for now. And again,
Mhm.
I'm using the K-Lytics, which is only Amazon. There
Of
are other
course.
platforms out there, so
Well, of course. But I mean, Amazon is what?
biggest
70%?
portion. Yeah, it's
70,
70%
80% of the
of
market?
most authors' income. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And like, and then I mean, outside of Amazon, then you what have things like Barnes and Noble,
Kobo.
Apple, yep,
Yeah.
which isn't very much. So yeah. So as I think about it, when we think about genre, do you see more books becoming adaptations? When we think about it from like the visual perspective, now that there's maybe more opportunities to create.
What do you mean by adaptations? A book?
So books being adapted into other formats.
Oh,
So now
yes.
it seems like
Oh,
we
yeah.
have since AI has made it maybe a little bit more accessible. Do you kind of see like more books are going to now become TV shows? They're now going to become graphic novels, and so on and so forth.
I mean, from the indie author perspective, trying
Mhm.
to think that you're ever going to be on TV is a bit hard. I think.
We'll
I
create
mean,
our own
again,
television.
imposter syndrome going on here.
Mhm.
But being a graphic novel, sure, I see mine being a graphic novel one day, but that takes money. It
Mhm.
takes a lot of money. So,
Yeah, ain't that
and
the truth?
yeah.
Do
So
do you
I'll probably wait until I make it bigger.
do you think that when we think about the different publishing industries between the indie publishing, self, and then traditional publishing, do you think that indie publishing is going to continue to grow
Yeah.
in the most like predominance over time? Or do you think
Yeah.
it'll be like self-publishing will become more, or traditional publishing might make a comeback? How are you feeling?
At the current rate,
Mhm.
I don't think that traditional is going to keep up,
You
but
think traditional is going
they're
to
falling behind.
probably fall to the wayside
Yeah.
unless they
but they are making steps to kind of change things a little bit. I don't know if it's going to be enough, and I don't know if they have other changes in mind. So it kind of just depends, because people still do strive and achieve for traditional publishing, and I see all the benefits.
It still does kind of have that like what is it? It has that like upscale feeling, right? If I got picked up by Simon and Schuster or one of the big five, then I would still feel like people would look at it of like, oh, they're a real author. They're definitely a real author.
Yeah, I mean, there's still that when people are like, oh, what do you do? I wear shirts all the time that have writing stuff on them. And we were gone for the last few days. My oldest son was here. He just left out this morning, but we were traveling last few days. And I wore writing t-shirts, and people would stop me and said, let me see your shirt, and they're reading and like, oh, do you write? And I'm like, yeah, I'm an author. And there's always that part of me that's like, I'm an author.
I'm an author. I swear. I write books. I have a course and stickers.
Where if I was traditionally published, I'd probably say it with more oomph, but I know me at my age, I'm not going after traditional publishing at my age. I'm not going to wait a decade of my life to find out someone wants to publish me. So, and I do like control. So.
And I remember we were talking about that earlier. Why do people stay self-published? Control. Control is one of the things. So that's interesting. I almost wonder if the reason traditional publishing still has that kind of air is because of where it used to be, where we used to be as an industry a decade ago, right? When traditional publishing was more of the gatekeepers, so to speak. Do you think people will vie more towards like self-publishing, or do you think indie publishing is kind of going to, like, how do you feel between these two?
Well, that it's great that you said that, because that was another thing that I had thought of. I had it mentioned when you said the gatekeeping. Gatekeeping has kept out having the diversity that we're now seeing coming out in indie publishing.
And maybe that's the reason why, right? Because diversity, like, there's just more openness, more ability of the next generations willing to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
In every respect, it's becoming more diverse, which I love, because
absolutely.
We all have generations coming up who are diverse. We want them to be able to see themselves in these books. So.
So So I mean, when I think about the two industries between self and indie, so do you think it's easier now to be represented by an indie publisher than it was in previous years?
Okay, so are you talking about indie publisher, a smaller publishing press?
Yeah, kind of like a smaller publishing press.
Yeah. I've never pursued that, so I couldn't talk to it, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, what's interesting is I see so many writers come through this community, right? And their goal is always I want to write a book. I want to get my book out there. And a lot of times I don't really see them not always looking through the next steps of the process, or they're looking at it in an abstract sense. I think that most or a lot of writers I've seen tend to self-publish first because it's easy or maybe more accessible. And then we go through the query trenches, and that's a whole other thing. What I'm wondering is, do you think that writing in general, becoming an author, is more accessible now, or more accessible in the future, becoming more accessible than it has been in past years?
Yeah, definitely. Well, and as technology increases, I always tell anyone who wants to self-publish, if they know they want to self-publish, you always just go with Amazon first. And because Amazon is so easy to upload a book. So easy.
It is. It literally takes like 10 minutes. Yeah.
It's not hard. And, every platform has their requirements, what it has to look like, what your document has to look like, what your cover has to look like, like as far as the dimensions and all this stuff. Amazon's by far the easiest. And I stuck with Amazon for the first year or so. I said by 2 years I was going to go wide, and I did it sooner than 2 years. But just getting uploaded on the other platforms is like, oh my gosh. And I know why people stay with Amazon.
Because it takes more work. You got to make sure on each of the other ones.
They're much more difficult. It's doable. So I don't know if I answered your question. I feel like I had missed something.
Oh, no, that's totally all good. I'm kind of just like guessing and postulating as I'm like thinking about the future here. So if you were to take a guess based on everything that you know, where do you think the writing industry, or being an author, the industry at large, will be in 5 to 10 years? Where do you think we're going to be heading?
I can say what I
So
want.
then if you're right, we'll clip this, and in 5 years, we'll be like, Shannon called it.
I try to hold out hope
Mm-hmm.
that the positive parts of the AI, as far as readers,
Mm-hmm.
will continue. So, like if you use Perplexity AI is a good one for
Mm-hmm.
you go in there and you say, I like this book that has this, this, and this, and this and this. Can you give me some authors who have this? You're going to be given authors that are traditionally published or indie published that probably would not appear on the page of Amazon when you're trying to find the same thing. So you get to, it's more of, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of a, what they call that? Organic search,
Mm-hmm.
you know, where Amazon's going to gear you toward the books that are popular, those who have advertisements on them. Here in Perplexity, but Perplexity is now in talks about using advertisements. They're saying it's not going to change what response they give you. It's going to be like in the sidebar, like whatever on the side.
For now.
So I would love it that we have a point where we have like our own AI agent, or we can say, I want a book that has this trope, that's this genre with this niche. And it's going to give you the books, not by popularity, but what's there. And then it eventually learns
based on the interest. It's based on the interest graph.
And it starts learning your reading habits and what you're interested in. You're like, nope, that book was a DNF. Let me get rid of it. And so it knows, okay, no books like that one, you know, or whatever. So it would be great if that's where it's heading, which I think is kind of what they want to do, some of these AIs. And so if that happens, that will give more authors a chance to have that visibility that's not in a pay-to-play model. That's what I would like.
You know, I absolutely love that. And I could totally see that as the direction. I mean, if we even think about social media and the way the social media platforms have gone, there's a reason people like TikTok. Because TikTok pairs people with their interests. People have shown that they don't want a huge friends list of 1,000 people. They want to be in a community. So I think that can then be applied further to books. I don't want to go halfway through a book that, it has something I don't care about. I want to read books where I love all the themes, and then I want more of it. Yeah. So I could totally see that AI makes that more accessible. And I mean, I think it's our hope that AI is, or we see AI algorithms platforms that are actually able to serve the reading experience.
Serve the person who's viewing, the consumer versus their platform.
Yeah. Exactly.
And of course,
reader versus a paywall or a gatekeeper, so to speak.
And of course, taking all that into account, everything I've been talking about, what Becca Sam calls that vertical platform, where you have the community you're building up based off of your book and the products and everything else that goes with it. So
awesome. Well, this is we've definitely gone through some incredible information. Is there any advice, any like parting advice you would want to leave to our authors here? Any like inspiration for anyone who might be like struggling or thinking, you know what, now's not the time?
I think now is always the right time. You're not late. You're not too soon. Do it now. But take it one step at a time, because especially even if you're doing indie or traditional, not indie, there's a lot more work on the back end after you have a book that's published. With traditional, there's a lot more work on the front end before you get published. So
yeah, ain't that the truth?
Yes. So you've got to give yourself that time. You have to realize you're going to need that time to learn it, but you don't have to know it all right now, because you could try and cram it all in and try and get it all in, and it's going to change on you. So
that's right. Wait, AI, it changes every couple of months.
Yes, it changes. So just learn what you're comfortable learning right now, but I would always say, don't forget why you're doing it in the first place, which is the love of writing.
I wonder if sometimes authors might lose that sense in the long term once you've gone through a journey, right? Because then we got to make the money to make that a reality.
Yeah.
So Shannon, this has been an absolutely incredible conversation. I want to say, like, I can tell just from seeing the chat that the chat has been very, very active, and they have absolutely loved hearing this. I know I feel like every single time I talk with you, I'm learning so much. I feel like a student, and I have to go check out all these things. I'm definitely checking out the K-Lytics report as soon as possible. I definitely want to check out that book as well. I'm always looking for new ways. I mean, the strategy is do as much as we can with the time we have in a way that doesn't burn us out.
Yes. Take care of you.
I absolutely love that, Shannon. Thank you for joining me today. Before we sign off, is there anywhere that you want to send any of our authors if they want to know like more about you. I know we advertise the AuthorTube writing conference. We'll make sure if there's any mods in here who can maybe drop the link to the AWC one more time in the chat if anybody wants to go check them out again. And volunteer calls until January 15th, I believe.
Yeah, and that's just for anybody who's on YouTube who wants to talks about writing and or publishing. You can speak at the AuthorTube Writing Conference, but you don't have to sign up to go to the conference. You just be there. So
yep, completely free. You said end of June, right?
End of June, last weekend in June.
End of June, completely free. Many authors. It's clearly like it's the event of the summer. It's the event of the year to be. And you'll get a lot of value out of it. It sounds really, really cool.
Yeah. I hope so.
Awesome.
I was looking through the chat to see if there's anything. I think Mama Maggie, Penumbra Mine.
I know. Penumbra Mine, MM
Ward. Yeah, she said Trad Pub 4 have embraced tokenism and the legacy entertainment media prefers remakes over new content. I think that's when you were asking me about, the indie publishing houses, which she is with a small indie press. So she would be a good one to talk to about that. But I remember, I think, Mom Maggie, you can say if I'm saying wrong, when you were asking about it and we were talking about like the, diversifying, I think she had a male couple and they wanted her to change it. And she's like, no, I'm not going to change it. I don't think it's this press. I think it was a different one. Or maybe it was an editor.
Good for them. I mean, I think sometimes you have to stick to your artistic creative sense. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So I think that definitely lets us have more. I'm trying to see if there was anything. I thought I saw something else that someone asked me a question. Oh, my audiobook. Someone asked where I only have one audiobook out right now. That is with a novella, The Sunstone and the Hybrid Prince. I do have my A Curse of Scales and Feathers is done, but I have to still edit. I just finished recording all of it. Now I have to edit it, which means there's probably more recording in the future. So.
Which is absolutely great. And absolutely, like you're bringing up a great point. If anybody has questions, ask your questions. We'll take 3 questions. I will take 3 questions. I'm happy to extend this just a little bit. If anybody has any questions for Shannon, like this is a wealth of knowledge. I've learned like 20 things in the past hour, and I still have 20 questions I could ask. That's the life of an author and a content creator in this day and age. Let's see. Dan is like,
oh, sorry. What was that? Mom Maggie did clarify. She said she got a rejection letter for not changing Mitch and Jackson into Mitch and Jackie.
Okay. Penumbra got a rejection letter for not changing Mitch and Jackson. Yep. Penumbra, I'll totally have to have you come on the podcast sometime. I would love to chat with you about your experience. I always love connecting with others who've gone through the journey, because I know that's a question I get a lot, right? When you start entering into negotiations with whether it's agents, indie publishers, or anybody, how do you keep your artistic integrity to the story you want to tell?
Yeah.
So I would absolutely love to chat about that. But we got a good question. Catherine asked, welcome to the stream, Catherine. Glad you're here. How do you fight off burnout when you're so involved in so many aspects of the writing community?
I'm still trying to figure this one out. I burnt out a lot less this year, but I was burning out again. Last year, I actually went to a conference, I think it was September. And when I got to the conference this year and I was like sitting there, I was like, why would I have signed up for this one? So I looked back through my notes and I was like, oh, I signed up for this in November or something last year. And I was in the middle of burnout and didn't know it. And the conference I went to in September was all about taking care of you, working within what you're able to do and not burning out. So I was like, why am I here? Because I usually go to conferences that are all about giving me information. I love collecting information. I think it's all about, for me, I've just reevaluated my goals every year. I do at the beginning of the year and I try to figure out, what worked for me, what didn't work for me. And in this past year, I always call it the way of the author, but this last year it became the ways of the author. So it's writing goals, authoring goals, which is the publishing part, YouTube goals, and self-care goals. I added in self-care this year.
Self-care is important. That's great.
And I didn't want to burn out again, but I was getting to a point where I was burning out. And I mean, even Jared could probably tell you because I didn't answer his email for like 10 days. But I was burning out and I seriously just had to not think. But when I am kind of starting to burn out, I do tend to gravitate to things I love. So it's either reading or doing a bunch of graphic or artist things. So I'll tend to make a bunch of social media posts that I know I'll never post, but there are lots of pretty pictures.
All right, so you have like years of unused
Yes.
social media posts in
Yeah,
the catalog.
I
Okay, cool.
do. But they'll never make it there.
Oh man, I love that. So that's absolutely a great question. And I know you mentioned conferences as well. Are there any in-person like live ones that you would mention or that you would suggest?
I'm gonna go to Author Nation next year. That one's expensive just by itself, so it's the only one I'm gonna go to. But I think
Where is Author Nation? Where's
Las
that?
Vegas. Las Vegas.
Vegas. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, you have to pay for a hotel, you have to pay for the
Mhm.
flight there, and yeah, and
Right,
then
of course.
it's a really expensive conference. And then they went up
Mhm.
$100 on their ticket from when it was 20 bucks to 50K. So Author Nation took over 20 bucks to 50K. Which
Okay.
meant that they took over the same contract with the same hotel until it runs
Mhm.
out, but then they made the ticket $100 higher. So and I think I spent like $1,500 a year I went just to go to the
Mhm.
conference. But yeah, so I'm gonna think about, you know, I think that's the one I'm gonna go to this next year. I think it's the one I'm gonna go to. I would say if you can do anything Becca Syme, do Becca Syme. Go check out our
Mhm.
YouTube channel. It's called Becca Syme.
Mhm.
Becca's Becca and Syme Syme. So she is a certified Gallup's coach to work with the Clifton Strengths, which
Mhm.
is finding out how you work as a worker.
Clifton Strengths is great.
Yes.
Clifton Strengths is really great for understanding the like what are the things that you're good at that you excel at.
Yes. And so
Mhm.
I did an online conference with her. It was using the Clifton Strengths and marketing. And that was
Mhm.
probably the best conference I ever went to, which was great because that conference ticket was very expensive for online.
Mhm.
But I got so much out of that conference. So Brian Cohen, anything he does, I like Brian Cohen's conference. That's the one I went to for the burnout stuff um, in September, I think it was. So yeah. So.
Let's see. Penumbra Mine asked a great question. You always lean hard into blended mythologies and creating your own mythologies. How far from the IRL do you lean when creating these worlds? How do you choose what to keep and what to toss?
That is very hard line, I think,
Mhm.
because I do like blending the mythologies. And I was kind of using like different Asian cultures, but I had just recently decided I'm going to stick with Japanese culture because it's a secondary world, secondary Earth. So it's not our world, but it's like a world that's like ours. There's a secondary trope, a secondary Earth trope for my world. And then I do bring in a lot of other mythologies. So I think that I don't know where that line is at, but there's a line that where you're using too much that's real world, where you can do an injustice to that culture's mythology. So you have to be very careful, I think, where you're what you're using and how you're using it. So I'm very careful about what I'm using and trying to make sure that I'm doing justice to the
Mhm. Mhm.
mythologies
Mhm.
so that I'm not, you know, so that I'm honoring it the way it should be honored
Mhm.
from that culture. So I think that's the biggest things I try to think about how I can honor. But to be honest, in my first book that I wrote, I was using a lot of these different ideas, and Mom Maggie was the one who picked up. Like, how did you get all these Asian influences? I'm like, I do.
We try to go for 10 things and the reader picks the one thing we didn't even intend. We're like,
But I
yeah,
loved
yeah,
it.
that was always the goal. Sure.
Yeah, because that made me realize, yes, I'm doing this. I need to do it purposefully so that I'm honoring the
Mhm.
traditions and not,
Mhm.
you know, messing it up in some way.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. That's really really cool, and I think it comes to that creative balance of what feels right for ourselves, mixed with whatever we're pulling in from the
Yeah.
outside world.
Yeah.
So I absolutely love that. And then we got a couple questions, which they're kind of along the same line, asking about audiobooks. And
Okay.
I know clearly, once again, what you said earlier, right? Audiobooks, very, very big, becoming more and more popular. What Let's see. So I'll see if I can kind of do these two questions in one. So what would you recommend, since clearly you've been doing your own audiobooks? I know you recommended Audacity, I believe.
That's my favorite.
Um, mhm. Would do you think it's effective for people to do their own audiobooks themselves, kind of like what you're doing, or do you think readers kind of expect more like professional like voice actors?
I don't think there's a right or wrong answer for this one, to be
Mhm.
honest. There are readers who like specific voice actors or audiobook narrators, and
Mhm.
they will choose books based off of just those narrators. So
Mm,
there's that aspect that if you choose a narrator who's well known and liked, you're probably going to get a built-in audience, but
mhm,
those also come with a price.
mhm.
So I'm
Right.
doing it
And if you're able to afford that, yeah, yep.
yeah. So I'm doing it myself because the pricing. It's
Mhm.
just, there's no way. My first series that I wrote, I didn't understand right to market. There's no one looking for third century Ireland Irish mythologies. So
Mhm.
I am $4,000 in the hole with it. I am never going to pay anyone to do those audiobooks because I'm not
Mhm.
going to be more in the hole for books. And I make sales off of them still, but I'm going to be like 82 before I pay it off. So, I'm very cautious about where I'm spending my money. So I'm doing it myself. Now, there's the
Mhm.
other side. The pro for doing it yourself, besides just the cost, is that
Mhm.
some readers really like that connection to hear
Mhm.
your voice. You're the writer, so they want to hear your
Mhm.
voice. Now, if you've got a boring voice like me, that might not work, but I don't know if it's going to work or yet now because I only have one audiobook out right now. So
Well,
my
I think
mother
that
told
was,
me my voice was boring, just so you know.
I don't think your voice is boring. I feel like your audiobooks would probably actually be really good. And I know I'm planning on listening to it because I'm an audiobook listener. So with that, we have to move on. But this has been absolutely incredible, Shannon. Like once again, I've learned so much. And I am looking forward more than ever to next year and especially the AWC in 2025.
Yay. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. I'm sure we'll talk again. And once again, everyone who is involved in the community, everyone who's been chatting, we've gotten some incredible questions. You can contact Shannon over with the AWC. I know we've dropped the link a couple times. If you have questions or if you want to be a volunteer for the AuthorTube Writing Conference in June. But Shannon, this has been wonderful. Thank you again, and I'll let you get going, my friend.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
All right. So who's ready for a free giveaway? Who is ready for a free giveaway? Because we have some